Now we're thinking about the lead category of sustainable sites. And remember what we know about the word sustainable. A healthy, resilient landscape is self-sustaining, which means it can persist over time with minimal input from humans. So it's got a diversity of plant life and animal life. It's got healthy ecosystems. It has plant species and animal species that are either native or they're adapted to the local region. So we minimize site disturbance, we conserve native topsoil, which we'll talk about in a minute. We use water that falls from the sky, and we infiltrate that water on the site. Sustainable sites is one of the categories in all the LEED rating systems. And there's another rating system that's related and also from USGBC. LEED applies to buildings and the sites they sit on. If you have a site without buildings, you can still get certified, and you use a system called SITES, which is short for the Sustainable Sites Initiative. One of the prerequisites for site certification is a soil protection plan. So the two greatest threats to healthy soil are erosion, soil washing away, and compaction, soil getting compacted, squished together. And once soil is compacted, it's often impossible to restore its structure, at least within a time span that's meaningful to humans. Compaction has a big effect on soil ecology, and we're going to look at soil ecology in a couple of slides. So when soils are compacted, the critters who live in their habitats are destroyed and they die. In a soil protection plan, you have protection zones that are surrounded with fencing. Here's chain link fencing, often it's orange construction fencing. So we protect the soil from vehicles parking on it or driving over it, from having materials stored on it or any other construction activities. And we also do not stockpile and reuse soil if we can possibly help it. Soil is a precious resource, and it gets destroyed if we dig it up and pile it places. We can also have what's called a tree protection plan, which has similar requirements. No traffic, no parking, no storage of materials in the critical root zone, no stockpiling of soil, and so forth. Soil is a renewable resource, and it forms continuously. However, it forms very slowly. The rate of soil formation varies, but on average, new soil forms at a rate of 0.004 of an inch per year. So it takes up to 1,000 years for 1 inch of topsoil to form. And by the way, soil does a lot of things besides grow plants. It's also an essential component of the global carbon cycle, the global nitrogen cycle. It sequesters carbon and does a bunch of other good stuff. When you stand on the ground, there is more life, more biodiversity under your feet than there is above the surface. And if you pick up a handful of soil, there are more creatures living in that handful of soil than there are human beings on the entire planet. So soil is far more than powdered rock. It's a complex ecosystem, and it has vast numbers of living beings in it, with air, water, humus, mineral grains, all making up ecosystems. And these ecosystems provide all kinds of niches for the creatures who live in them. And each type of creature finds niches where the amount of air, moisture, and nutrients are just right for their way of life. populations of living beings are especially concentrated in the microhabitats around roots, and this is known as the rhizosphere. Rhizos means root. These zones are dense with a couple of kinds of things. There are microscopic fungi, and these zones are rich in sugars that the plant roots exude, and they're teeming with bacteria who feed on the sugars and the decomposing root hairs. And the zones are filled with roaming protozoa and nematodes who graze on the bacteria. And the bacteria, like with many systems, are the most essential organisms in the soil. They have a unique ability to transform inert nitrogen. Inert means it can't be broken down, it can't be used by life forms. So these bacteria can transform this inert nitrogen into an accessible form. Without those nitrogen-fixing bacteria, living plants on the whole planet would starve for lack of nitrogen. Then the fungi, the fungus hairs, and the plant roots form a symbiotic relationship known as mycorrhizae. So symbiosis means they cooperate and they each benefit the other. Mycorrhizae comes from two Greek words meaning fungus and root. So this is a cooperative arrangement that is found on almost every plant on Earth who depends on these. The fungi have these little hyphae, little filaments that go out into the soil, and they act as surrogate roots. They completely encase the tiny plant roots, and they send out these really fine threads that give the plant roots access to nooks and crannies in the soil that they could not otherwise get into. And the fungi help supply the plants with nutrients and also with water. And then in return, the plants who are exuding sugars provide food that feed the fungus. When you are maintaining soil or rebuilding soil, compost is a universal tool that works on every site in every situation. It's full of microbial life and animal life. And it's like humus in the forest or humus on the prairie. It absorbs water, it provides minerals and other nutrients, and of course it enriches the ecosystems in the soil with the populations of creatures who are living within it. And it works on darn near every site. In clay soil, it improves the soil structure and it helps the soil drain. In sandy soil, it helps hold water. So, soil is far more than powdered rock. Soil on a site is an ecosystem. And that means that when you're taking care of soil, you are essentially practicing ecosystem conservation or ecosystem restoration. The only difference is the ecosystem happens to be underground. And so keeping that soil ecosystem healthy means not doing anything that would harm it. So we don't deprive it of water, we don't poison its inhabitants with pesticides, and we do things that will maintain its natural functioning or even improve its natural functioning. And our goal is, back to sustainability, our goal is for this soil ecosystem to operate on its own over long periods of time.